So how much did it cost to see a movie when you were 10, 11 years old?
Well, children were for 5 to 10 cents, adults 25 cents.
Well, that's interesting, because today we all know what it costs to see a movie, especially at a place like Silver City. Silver City is a franchise of movie theaters that came in about 1997, and you can pay upwards of $14 to $15 now for a ticket, and you can pay around $20 if you're seeing a movie in IMAX. The IMAX presentations are interesting. I like them, but like 3D, they don't do a whole lot for me. I just prefer to go watch a movie the old-fashioned regular way. Before IMAX, about 25, 30 years ago, and even going back to the 1960s and 70s, there was a process called 70 millimeter, and some films were even shot in Super Panavision 70 millimeter. They got rid of that format. The last movie that I can recall seeing in 70 millimeter was Silverado in 1985. And then throughout the 1990s, they developed the IMAX system for full use around the world. Now, you and I went to see some movies, remember, at Cinesphere at Ontario Place?
Oh, yeah.
Now, here in Canada, in Toronto, we have a place called the Canadian National Exhibition. It's near the waterfront in Toronto, and they have it every summer from around the middle of August until Labor Day. Now, some of the attractions there are closed, but they have this gigantic ball-shaped building. It looks just like a giant golf ball, and it's called Cinesphere. And they used to show movies there. We went to see movies there, in the winter of 88, 89, and 90. Mm-hmm. And we saw movies there like Top Gun, Platoon, Lawrence of Arabia, and these movies looked fantastic. And my favorite, of course, for sound was Apocalypse Now, because you're sitting inside this ball-shaped room. And remember how the helicopters sounded like they were actually in the room and flying around us?
Oh boy.
How amazing that sounded. Apocalypse Now, I think, can be probably called the greatest sound movie of all time, if not the most pioneering sound movie of all time in the breakthrough for the Dolby system. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yes, oh yes.
Well, when they closed that theater up, and they didn't use it much anymore, they pretty much did that going into the 90s in Hamilton. Hamilton used to have some beautiful movie theaters. Dad's going to talk about some of those movie theaters in a minute. But I never really got a chance to go downtown here in Hamilton until about 1977, 78. Star Wars was the movie that changed everything for me. Star Wars opened up in May of 1977, and for 52 weeks, not including vacations that we took in the summertime, I went to see Star Wars every weekend for a year. And in that time frame, movies like Superman opened up, and other films that I thoroughly enjoyed, comedies, all different genres. And we used to have the Center Mall East and West in Hamilton, which is where I saw Star Wars. That was pretty modern. So was the Odeon, that's where I saw Close Encounters for the first time. The Century, where I saw Superman. But the real theater for me was the Tivoli. Now the Tivoli goes way back to 1875 here in Hamilton. It started off as, it was many things. It was built in 1875. It was a fire hall. It was a vaudeville theater. It was a movie theater. When it closed for good as a movie theater in 1989, it became a live theater house. They show things like Shane there, and Godspell, and Jesus Christ Superstar, and many other good productions. Last time I was in that building was 2004 in March, and the theater had to be condemned a few months after that because part of the side was caving in. But Dad, just tell us about the Capitol, the Palace, the Granada, the Savoy, and these are theaters that go back to your time.
Oh, I think the most beautiful theaters I ever was in was the Capitol and the Palace and the Tivoli, and of course the old Savoy theater.
Well, now tell us about one of those theaters. You've talked about it many times. Tell us about the seating capacity. 2,000, 3,000 people, something like that?
About 2,500, yes.
And which one was that?
Capitol.
What were some of the movies that you saw at the Capitol?
Oh, Gone with the Wind. There were so many. I can't remember.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but these movie theaters were rarely empty, right?
Oh, that's for sure. Oh.
You could pretty much go on a weeknight or a weekend
Yep.
And they were always full, weren't they?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, now tell us the story about when you would go to the show and you wouldn't have to line up and wait for the next show. Tell us the revolving door story.
Well, when you went in there, the theater was running. And
Okay, we're gonna help Dad out here. What he's trying to say is, you would go to the show. You would go to the show, and you never had to stand in line for the next show. What would happen is you would show up. Let's say the movie started at 1 o'clock, and the next show was at 3 o'clock. You could walk in at 1 o'clock, 1:15, 1:30, 1:45. You could walk in halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, whenever you wanted. You could sit down, watch a movie, and then you could watch the first half of the movie second. It was a revolving door of admissions. You never had to stand in line for the next show. You just paid your admission whenever you wanted to walk up. 12 o'clock till the movie theater closed. You could walk in late at night, right?
That's right.
About 9:30,
That's right.
10 o'clock, and you could watch the last half hour of a movie if you wanted, right?
You're correct.
Because you know, it's interesting, because if you have to go to work, let's say, and you got to leave a movie with half an hour left, yeah, sure, you don't want to pay to see a movie a second time. If you love movies enough, you don't mind doing that. So if you want to go back at some point to see a movie and see what you missed, you could do that. And in those days, you had the option of doing it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, you know what? I'm not mentioning any names here, but I am going to tell you my theory of what destroyed the neighborhood movie theater around here. About 35 years ago, there was a chain of movie theaters in Canada called Canadian Odeon Theaters, and they were bought by Cineplex Odeon. In 1979, they opened up the Eaton Centre Complex in downtown Toronto at Yonge and Dundas, and I worked there on and off. Transferred around to other movie theaters, I worked there for 6 years. And I can tell you wholeheartedly that when you worked in these movie theaters, the screens were small, the admission was too high, and the concession prices, like today, were definitely too high. This chain of movie theaters basically took into account the fact that people didn't want to go to neighborhood movie theaters anymore. They felt that it would be better to have all these theaters together so you had your choice of films. Not everyone agreed with this. Neighborhood movie theaters stayed for a while, but slowly the idea of the Cineplex took away your single screen and your double screen theaters. Fast forward to the middle of the 1990s now. The government here decided to amalgamate the cities, which meant that where I live, Hamilton, that's the main name of our city. Smaller cities and towns around us like Stony Creek, Ancaster, Dundas, Glenbrook, Flamborough, these cities were all incorporated into the city of Hamilton. So what ended up happening was everybody's property taxes skyrocketed as a result of it, despite the fact that they told us we were going to save money. Now you've got property taxes going up for everybody, including the movie theaters. So if you were renting or if you owned a building, you had to pay an increase in rent or an increase in taxes. So I'm sure they got together one day and said, why should we have one theater here, one theater there? Why don't we just close the neighborhood movie theaters and amalgamate everything into one big building? Doesn't that make you sick?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You know, I mean, we try to look on the positive side for the most part, but we're also not fools. And we know when something is bad, and we call them on it. And, you know, I've been to the United States quite a few times, but I've never actually been to New York or Los Angeles or Chicago or any of the cities where I know that places like Radio City Music Hall are still there, the Carnegie Movie Theater, the Carnegie Hall in New York City, and Los Angeles, from what I understand, has a great deal of retro theaters left where you can go on a given night and see an Orson Welles classic, a Frank Capra classic, a Billy Wilder, a William Wyler, a John Ford classic, anytime you want. And they're starting to do that here. Silver City is bringing back some films from the golden age of movies. We saw Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yes.
We saw Singin' in the Rain. We also went to see Double Indemnity. We saw Casablanca. We saw Citizen Kane. So some of the films are coming back. Now, you know, a fella opened up a movie theater here in Hamilton, a standalone theater back in the fall of 2004. He didn't think it through. This was the old York Theater in Hamilton. He opened it up and called it the Movie Palace. And underneath the caption read, "The stuff that dreams are made of." And that line is from John Huston's The Maltese Falcon from 1941. He never took into account advertising. No one knew this theater was there. He never took into account the parking hassles. There was no free parking around. You had to park on the street for a limited time with the meters, or you had to park in a lot down the street and around the corner. Parking was a real hassle. He found out that Hamilton, Ontario, while being a great city, is not as culturally vibrant as Toronto. Hamilton is blue collar, sports, 2 4Ks of beer. That's what people like to do here. The aesthetics of culture for movies and art are far greater in Toronto. And this man was from Mississauga, and I don't understand why he didn't open his theater there. I liked him, I wished all the best for him, but it didn't work. So what he had to do eventually was he had to scrap the idea of the classic movie series, and he had to buy himself a projector, and he had to start showing first run 35mm films. The problem was there was a competing theater not too far away, and he couldn't show the same films until they'd been open for 2 or 3 weeks. So the idea didn't work for him, and I felt bad because he was a good guy, but it didn't work for him, and it just goes to show you how much the movie business, the movie theater business, has evolved. Now, one thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about the evolution of not the movie, but the movie ticket. You can talk all you want about looking at the #1 box office hit for the week. These numbers are deceiving. What is happening now is companies are making films and they're pouring a tremendous amount of money into the marketing because they want to make back as much money as they can the first week. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is these films often run out of steam by the 2nd or 3rd week, and then they have to rely on overseas rights and, of course, all the different media that come with it, Netflix, DVD, and so on and so on and so on. The real measure of a film, because if you're talking about movie theaters and viewing something on the big screen, I believe people still want to see a movie on the big screen, but I believe they are not willing to pay the price for the ticket, for the concessions, and for all the frills that go with it, like parking, gas, babysitter, and possibly dinner before or afterwards. To me, in my opinion, the real mark of a film is how many tickets does it sell. And how is a movie going to sell tickets? If it is affordable and viable, especially in these times when money for people around the world is tighter than ever. Now, there's an internet site called boxofficemojo.com. No hyphens, just type in boxofficemojo.com and go to the section where it has top domestic grosses of all time adjusted for inflation. For those of you that don't know what that means, Dad said at the beginning, a movie in 1939 for an adult costs $0.25. All you have to do is adjust that for inflation today and what the cost of that would be today. So $0.25 today, when you inflate it up, you just move ahead for all the adjustment in price. Now, I have numbers here based on ticket sales that go back many years. Now listen to this. These are the top 10 movies of all time, adjusted for inflation from what they cost in their time, based on what it would cost in our time. Number 10, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937. This movie in 1937 dollars, $184,900,000. Okay? By today's standards, that works out to be $889,400,000. Number 9, 1973's The Exorcist. In 1973 dollars, $232,900,000. By today's standards, $900,500,000. Number 8, 1965's Dr. Zhivago, $111,720,000. Adjusted for today, $1,012,945,300. Number 7, 1975's Jaws, and I have a story about Jaws for you in a moment about that. In 1975 dollars, Jaws was $260 million. By today's box office money, that equivalates to $1,045,123,000.
Wow.
I saw Jaws in 1975 with my cousin and with Dad, and it was the closest I ever came to seeing a movie that I enjoyed after Star Wars. It really was something that took the movie world by storm. When I worked in Toronto from 1987 to 1993, I worked there and I spoke to an elderly lady, an elderly cashier who had been working at the theater since 1969, and this was 1988. In 1975, when they opened Jaws, 4 or 5 months later, the lineups were still around the block and they were selling out and selling out and selling out. Jaws, before Star Wars, is truly the first blockbuster. At least I've talked to several people who think that, and a lot of historians believe the same thing. Number 6, The Ten Commandments, 1956. $65,500,000. Today's money, $1,068,960,000. Number 5, now this is interesting, because this is a recent movie. Once in a while, you have the exception to the rule. This movie is only 16 years old. 1997's Titanic. $658,672,000. Today's money, $1,105,470,000. Number 4, 1982's E.T. the Extraterrestrial. $435,110,000. Aren't these numbers amazing?
Amazing.
You know, by today's standards, $1,157,531,000.
Wow.
Number 3, The Sound of Music, 1965, $158,670,000. Translated into today's money, $1,162,110,500. Number 2, Star Wars, 1977, $460 million, $460,998,000. Today's money, $1,453,455,000. What's number 1, Dad? What's the number 1 movie of all time adjusted for inflation if you look at that statistic and consider it solely in terms of selling tickets?
Was it Ben-Hur?
No. It was a movie that we talked about in the beginning, or I asked you what year at the beginning, the movie.
Was it The Maltese Falcon?
No, close. It's a Civil War epic saga.
Oh, a Civil War.
And the character at the end didn't give a damn.
Golly, you got me, Walt, to be honest with you.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind.
Oh yeah, Gone with the Wind.
$198,676,000, which translates into today's money, $1,648,684,000. You probably thought that top 10 list sounded long-winded. Well, you know what? Frankly, it did. And I was doing it to make a point, to show you that a movie from 1939, after all these years that the movies have been around, a movie from 1939 has sold the most tickets domestically in history. And I think that is something that just knocks me over. You look at all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies of the last 20 years. You look at, in that 20-year span, I'm also talking about the Simpson-Bruckheimer films. I'm talking about any Disney film you want to name. Anything that's really big, splashy special effects, family, movies like Toy Story, take all of it. And nothing compares to 1939's Gone with the Wind for selling tickets. Now, tell us the story about you and Mom and Mom's parents when you went to see Ben-Hur. Tell us where you saw Ben-Hur.
Well, Ben-Hur was playing in Buffalo, New York. And we went to see it. And it didn't come to Canada for about 6 months after that. Cora's mother and father was living in Niagara Falls, Ontario at the time. And they come up and picked us up and drove us over to Buffalo to see that. And oh, I thought that was tremendous. Now, well, what about the Adventures of Robin Hood?
Well, that was made in 1938. And Robin Hood was made at a time when a lot of people were looking to make talkies. And they wanted to make more adventure films in the talkie genre because Douglas Fairbanks had started a lot of the stunt-oriented pictures back in the silent era with movies like Zorro. So that was made in 1938. But the reason I asked you to tell me the story about Ben-Hur was because I wanted to talk about film distribution. Film distribution is something that, in this day and age, I get very upset when a film opens up and it's got big stars, a big director, you know it's going to do well, and it gets a limited release. And I'm not talking about a limited release for 2 weeks or 3 weeks for word of mouth to spread. I'm talking about a limited release all around. I think the public is being cheated out of seeing some really good, high quality films because they have to make room for the big splashy special effects. I can remember going back 20, 30 years, and I can remember good films opening all year. January, February, March, April. Now, all the best movies are being condensed for the end of the year. And it really is too bad, don't you think?
You're damn right.
Yeah. Now, tell us the story of our first VCR that we bought.
Oh, the old Mitsubishi.
The old Mitsubishi.
Yeah, it was an up and down loader. And we got a lot of fun out of that.
And to this day, with the home entertainment market, with Blu-rays and DVDs and so on. And that has also taken a big hit. You know, the Shawshank Redemption, if you go to the Internet Movie Database, go there, look at the top 250 films of all time as judged by the public, and you will see Shawshank Redemption #1. I don't agree with that, even though it's a fine film. The Godfather is #2, so I'm biased. That's my favorite film of all time. But the Shawshank Redemption did not do good numbers. The numbers were terrible at the movies. 1986, a film called FX with Brian Brown and Brian Dennehy. That was the first film that woke up the studios in learning that the home market was a force to be reckoned with. And a lot of films that haven't done well in theaters have done very well on home video and have given them new life. Isn't that a wonderful story?
Oh yes, oh yes. I think about the most wonderful movie of all time was The Godfather.
Well, he likes Robin Hood. I mean, that's my favorite film. But he likes The Adventures of Robin Hood, and he's got very good taste in films, especially older films. Now, one thing that Dad noted from film historians is that The Adventures of Robin Hood may be the most perfectly cast film of all time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
With Errol Flynn as Robin Hood, Olivia de Havilland as Maid Marian, and all the other actors in the film like Basil Rathbone and Alan Hale and Claude Rains. All these characters fit their roles perfectly.
Perfect.
And I think you could make a strong case for that being the most perfectly cast film of all time.
It was. Absolutely.
Now you also like a lot of those gangster films from the 40s, the 30s and 40s, right? The Bogart and the Cagney and the Edward G. Robinson films, right?
And Pat O'Brien, oh yeah. Oh yes, they were great. They were great. Oh yes.
Remember, folks, you heard it here first. There's one thing I want to touch on today, and when I posted my Facebook status last night talking about producing this video today, I talked about our production budget. Frankly, we don't have one, and this entire thing is improvised. We didn't write any scripts. Dad and I sat around, we just talked, we just rehearsed a little bit.
Mumbled a
bit. You know, we mumble a lot. You know, what can you say? It's two guys living alone here. We just mumble a lot. We talk a lot. But most of what you're seeing here is improvised, and we hope that you're enjoying this video so far. But I did want to talk about our costume design budget. As you can see, Dad is wearing one of his pea caps there that he used to wear back in the 1930s, sort of like a Johnny Hooker from The Sting, Robert Redford from The Sting, a Johnny Hooker pea cap. And I actually like pea caps, they're not bad. But I have chosen to wear my cap, and I don't think this cap needs any explanation. The most influential rock band of all time. So that's what we are doing today. Now, there are a couple of things I wanted to touch on pursuant to the last segment. I wanted to talk about the first movies that we ever saw in life. You've got yours, we've got ours. What's the first movie that you remember seeing?
Buck Rogers.
And that was the one in the 1930s, right?
In the old Lyric Theater.
Right. The old Lyric Theater, by the way, was called The Century years later.
Yeah.
And I talked about that in the last segment where I saw Superman.
They just tore it down.
Right. That theater was built, about 1912, right? 1912 or so?
Yeah, somewhere.
And it closed about 1989, and it lay dormant like the city of Hamilton, lets everything fall apart. And the building was torn down about 2 or 3 years ago. Now, for me, I can remember seeing Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with my folks in Maine. We saw that at a drive-in in Maine, and the second feature was The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie with Maggie Smith. She won the Academy Award that year for Best Actress for that picture. But Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid at a drive-in in Maine in the summer of 1969. I would have turned 4 that December. That's the first movie that I can remember seeing and have my first memories of life about that picture. Now, in Hamilton here, we had a theater called The Cinema. It was just called The Cinema. And it was located about maybe a 5 or 10 minute bus ride from our house. For those of you that know Hamilton, you remember this theater. It was right across the street practically from the old Delta High School. And this theater showed nothing but Disney films for years and years and years. I saw the Dexter Riley comedies there with Kurt Russell. Now You See Him, Now You Don't. The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes and The Strongest Man in the World. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Remember Super Dad with Bob Crane?
Oh, yeah.
Kurt Russell was also in that one as well. And Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, remember?
Oh, they were.
Now, The Jungle Book was, I think the Jungle Book is from 1967. It's a little bit before my time as a moviegoer. I turned 2 years old that year. But The Jungle Book did come back in the 70s there. Remember it came back about 74, 75?
Yeah.
But a lot of the old Disney films from that time, the live action films were quite good. Remember the Apple Dumpling Gang?
Oh, yeah. The very first...
Do you remember the movie with Ed Asner? It was called Gus. It was about the mule from Yugoslavia, the mule from Yugoslavia that could kick field goals 100 yards.
Right.
And it was a guaranteed win every time.
Oh,
Some of those just Escape from Witch Mountain, Return to Witch Mountain, Freaky Friday, you name it. These pictures growing up as a kid really did something for me. And, I'd love to be able to talk for hours and hours at a time, and maybe we'll make another video at some point, but we're trying to squeeze in as much information here as we can.
Another thing I'd like to...
Sure, go ahead.
Another thing I'd like to mention is the very first theater I ever stepped inside was the old Playhouse Theater on Sherman Avenue.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that.
Right across from...
Go ahead, finish up.
Right across from the police station.
Okay.
Oh, what a memories I got of that theater.
You jogged my memory. Do you want to tell us about, because I have a story for you in a minute. Do you want to tell us about some of the movies that you saw there? Do you remember seeing the movies that you saw there? It's okay, I know you're older now and it's hard.
Oh, golly, I forget, to be honest with you.
Then I'll tell you my story about
I did see some Tom Mix movies.
And for those of you who don't know who Tom Mix was, he was a Western stunt action star who went back to the 1930s and 40s. And sadly, I believe Tom Mix was killed at a rather young age in a car accident, wasn't he? A race. Was it a race?
No, a car accident, 1941.
Okay, there you go. Now, you brought up the Playhouse Theater. I wanted to talk about that. Do you remember what happened to the Playhouse Theater in the years to come when the more modern era set in?
Well, like a lot of other theaters, it's just closed up.
No. The Playhouse Theater became a porno theater.
You did? Well, I did not know that, to be
Look,
honest with
I
you.
was never in there. I don't go to porno theaters, okay? But I do know this because I know the history of the city and I know the history of the films from the more modern times. Now, surely you must remember when the Tivoli was a porno theater.
Oh, I remember that.
The Tivoli
yes.
was a porno theater in the 70s
Yes.
as well. They got rid of all that garbage. They got rid of all that about 1977, 78. And they restored the Tivoli Theater back to its original beauty and glory. And the first film I saw there after it was restored, and I had only been going to the movies now on a regular basis for about 1 year. I told you about my escapades with Star Wars and how much I enjoyed that. The first movie I saw at the Tivoli after they kicked the pornos out of there and put real films in was Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Saturday Night Fever was restricted to people 18 years of age and over, but they did release in Ontario here a PG version of that, and I went to see it. They also did the same thing 2 years later with The Blues Brothers. The Blues Brothers was released in 1980, and I went to summer school that year after failing grade 9 math, and I went to see The Blues Brothers as a celebratory gesture. After. Remember we went to see the Blues Brothers?
Yeah.
We went for pizza afterwards? Okay. Now, on to our next official segment now. I don't have a smartphone. I don't know if I'm ever going to get a smartphone because for me the batteries aren't great. There's still a lot of Facebook glitches. You watch a YouTube video, it takes a tremendous amount of power on a smartphone. Sometimes you have to find ways to entertain yourself. So if I'm by myself, I usually take my iPod with me no matter where I go. Now, the other day, Dad and I were in the doctor's office. I'm pleased to tell you that Dad's checkup went very well. We went to see his cardiologist for the yearly checkup. But, you know, here's the thing. You sit in a doctor's office for 3 hours, only to be told that your test went well, Mr. Frith, and all we have to do is change one medication. 3 hours for that. So, Dad and I created our own form of entertainment. Tell them what we did sitting in that doctor's office that we're going to do right here for this video. Tell us what we're going to do right now.
Talk about different videos and different shows, different years, and we're going to pick out different numbers of theaters.
No, sorry.
What year?
Sorry, I apologize. Dad's a great guy, but we did Oscar trivia. Dad picked a year from the more modern times, like the 50s to now. And I said what the best picture was, the best actor, and so on and so on. Now, you know something? You may find this segment a little bit long-winded, but to me, this is something very personal for me. I don't read very much. And I just read reference material. I like statistics. I like to read about statistics in sports, entertainment, politics, who was elected, where and when, and so on and so forth. I'm not really a student of literature, I have to confess that. Probably because I was picked on in elementary school by a couple of teachers who didn't like me very much and they would force me to read stuff and to explain stuff in a way that you would expect from a 13 or 14-year-old, and I was only 7 or 8 years old. So those teachers sort of got me off literature, and you know, I find reading very boring. I mean, I know that may sound crazy. I start to read and my mind starts to wander. I'm more of a multimedia person. I like television, I like movies, I like to read statistics. And about 35, 40 years ago, I started reading statistics in a book on Oscar trivia. So I took it upon myself to memorize the history of the Academy Awards. Who can say why? That's the way my brain works. I suppose I enjoy it because it's peer versus peer. Actors vote for actors, directors vote for directors, writers vote for writers. Now, there are exceptions where I've heard where the writers, directors, and actors have given their secret ballots to their maid, their children, their friends. That's a rare exception. That doesn't happen very often. The Academy's made it clear they don't like people to do that. So, what we're going to do now, without further ado, I want you to reach into that bowl there, Dad, and I want you to pick out a slip, and I want you to read the year on it. We've picked about 20 years of Oscar trivia.
1974.
The Best Picture, The Godfather Part 2. Best Actor, Art Carney in Harry and Tonto. Best Actress, Ellen Burstyn in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Best Supporting Actor, Robert De Niro in The Godfather Part 2. Best Supporting Actress was Ingrid Bergman, who won her third Oscar that year for Best Supporting Actress in Murder on the Orient Express And the best director was Francis Ford Coppola for Godfather Part 2. Ingrid Bergman had won Best Actress in 1944 for Gaslight and 1956 for Anastasia. And she won her third Oscar, this time in the supporting category. And that was amazing. And Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola, had much more control this time. And a lot of people feel Godfather Part 2 is much better and more ambitious in the way it's produced. Next.
1963.
The Best Picture, Tom Jones. The Best Actor, Sidney Poitier in Lilies of the Field. The Best Actress, Patricia Neal in HUD. Best Supporting Actor, Melvin Douglas in HUD. Best Supporting Actress, Margaret Rutherford in The VIPs. And Best Director, Tony Richardson for Tom Jones. And you know what? That's a very significant year because Sidney Poitier became the first African-American male to win a lead Oscar, to win an Oscar for a leading role. And that was amazing, and he thoroughly deserved it.
1979.
Best Picture, Kramer vs. Kramer. Best Actor, Dustin Hoffman in Kramer vs. Kramer. Best Actress, Sally Field in Norma Ray. Best Supporting Actor, Melvin Douglas in Being There. And Best Supporting Actress, Meryl Streep in Kramer vs. Kramer. And Best Director, Robert Benton for Kramer vs. Kramer. Next.
2001.
Best Picture, A Beautiful Mind. Best Actor, Denzel Washington in Training Day. Best Actress, Halle Berry in Monsters Ball. Best Supporting Actor was Jim Broadbent in Iris. Best Supporting Actress, Jennifer Connelly in A Beautiful Mind. And Best Director, long overdue, Ron Howard for A Beautiful Mind. I know what you're all thinking out there. You're thinking that Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, got stiffed that year. It really didn't. If you go to 2003, after the first one and the Two Towers had been released, in 2003, Peter Jackson won 3 Oscars that year for Lord of the Rings. That's The Return of the King. He won an Oscar for picture, director, and screenplay. What can you say about that? You got to be fair to the other films. You might as well say Peter Jackson got 1 Oscar per film, which I think is fair. Next.
1998.
Best Picture, Shakespeare in Love. Best Actor, Roberto Benigni in Life is Beautiful. Best Actress, Gwyneth Paltrow in Shakespeare in Love. Best Supporting Actor, James Coburn in Affliction. Best Supporting Actress, Judi Dench for 8 minutes of screen time in Shakespeare in Love. And Best Director, Steven Spielberg for Saving Private Ryan, which should have won the Best Picture award that year. No further words on that are necessary. Next.
2007.
Best Picture, No Country for Old Men. Best Actor, Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. Best Actress, Marion Cotillard in La Vie en Rose. Best Supporting Actor, one of my personal favorites, Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men. Best Supporting Actress, Tilda Swinton for Michael Clayton. And Best Director, Joel and Ethan Coen for No Country for Old Men.
2009.
Best Picture, The Hurt Locker. Best Actor, Jeff Bridges in Crazy Heart. Best Actress, Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side. Best Supporting Actor, Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Basterds. Best Supporting Actress, Monique in Precious. And Best Director, Catherine Bigelow. Very nice to see the first woman in history win the Best Director Oscar for The Hurt Locker.
1958.
Best Picture, Musical, Gigi. Best Director, Vincent Minnelli for Gigi. Best Actor, David Niven in Separate Tables. Best Actress, Susan Hayward in I Want to Live. Best Supporting Actor, Burl Ives in The Big Country. And Best Supporting Actress was Wendy Hiller in Separate Tables. And that year, it was great to see David Niven win. David Niven is one of the most distinguished British actors of all time, and I don't think he got nearly his share of Hollywood films. And it was great to see him win an Academy Award. Next.
1968.
Oh, this is a year I want to talk about. This is a year I want to talk about in a minute for sci-fi fans. For those people who know what film came out that year and got stiffed by the Academy that year, but not by historians. Anyway, Best Picture, another musical, Oliver, with an exclamation point at the end. Best Actor, Cliff Robertson in Charlie, even though I have to say it should have gone to Peter O'Toole in The Lion in Winter that year. Best Actress, tie. Barbra Streisand in Funny Girl, Katharine Hepburn in The Lion in Winter. Best Supporting Actor, Jack Albertson in The Subject Was Roses. Best Supporting Actress, Ruth Gordon in Rosemary's Baby. And Best Director, Carol Reed for Oliver. Now, just a minute. The movie that got stiffed in 1968 was Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Way ahead of its time, misunderstood when it was first released. Kubrick was nominated for Best Director, the script was nominated, the art direction, and Stanley Kubrick did win an Academy Award for the film's visual effects. But the historians, especially the American Film Institute, recognized that film many years down the road. But in 1968, it was misunderstood by the Academy, did not receive a Best Picture nomination. Next.
1981.
The year of the Brits, who thoroughly deserved to win the Best Picture Oscar for Chariots of Fire. I'm the only person who likes Chariots of Fire. So does Dad, so does his brother. We all called it for winning Best Picture in 1981 when it was up against Reds, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Atlantic City, and On Golden Pond. I think Chariots of Fire is one of the most breathtaking triumphs and testaments to the human spirit that you will ever see. If sports like that were that noble and that honest today, I would be a sports fanatic. Best Actor, Henry Fonda in On Golden Pond. Katharine Hepburn in On Golden Pond, Best Actress. Katharine Hepburn won her 4th Best Actress Oscar for that film. And Daniel Day-Lewis has now won 3 Best Actor Oscars, and he's only 56 years old, and he is more than capable of winning a 4th Best Actor Oscar one day, which I predict he will do. Best Supporting Actor, in 1981, John Gielgud for Arthur. Best Supporting Actress, Maureen Stapleton for Reds. And Best Director, after 14 or 15 nominations for writing, producing, acting, and directing, Warren Beatty won his only Oscar for Reds. Next.
1949.
1949. Best Picture. These political times we live in suck. Everyone knows it. This picture is something that you really want to see. All the King's Men. Best Actor, Broderick Crawford in All the King's Men. Best Actress was Olivia de Havilland in The Heiress. Best Supporting Actor was Dean Jagger in 12 O'Clock High. And Best Supporting Actress was Mercedes McCambridge in All the King's Men. And Best Director that year, now, Best Director, I'm drawing a blank here. I'm going to think about it for a moment. Nobody is perfect, nobody is 100%, but I will do the best I can here. You know what, I'm drawing a blank on that. It wasn't All the King's Men. I asked Dad to choose these years at random, and he did, and he threw me a curveball, and I like that. Next.
1980.
1949. 1949, Best Director, Joseph L. Mankiewicz for A Letter to Three Wives. And he made All About Eve the following year. That's why nobody remembers A Letter to Three Wives, because All About Eve is so legendary. Sorry, go ahead.
1989.
Best Picture, Driving Miss Daisy. Best Actor, Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot. Best Actress, Jessica Tandy in Driving Miss Daisy. Best Supporting Actor, Denzel Washington in Glory. Best Supporting Actress, Brenda Fricker in My Left Foot. And Best Director, Oliver Stone for Born on the 4th of July. Hey, isn't this better than sitting in the doctor's office doing this, eh?
Oh, absolutely.
Go.
1946.
1946 is one of my favorite years because it pays tribute to the returning war vet. And we have a lot of vets coming back from wars today in Iraq and Afghanistan. And 1946, if you've never seen this movie, you must check it out. It's coming out on Blu-ray in December. 1946, The Best Years of Our Lives. What a tremendous film. And I believe that's one of the first films that you remember seeing with Mom, right?
Yeah.
My parents met in 1946 in the summertime. And my parents went to see that movie, and my dad raved about it for years and years and years. And I'm pleased to say that it's become a personal favorite of mine. The Best Actor was Frederick March in The Best Years of Our Lives. Best Actress was Olivia de Havilland for To Each His Own. Best Supporting Actor, Harold Russell for The Best Years of Our Lives. Now, he played a returning vet who sadly lost his hands in a fire aboard his ship He was in the Navy. And after that, sadly, he had hooks. But the character was so full of the will to live that he was determined to use his hooks to get by. He could light a match, open a beer bottle, do anything with what he called his hands. He never looked at them as hooks. They were his hands. And Harold Russell was also, he was not an actor. Harold Russell was an average guy who got the part because he was a returning war veteran, right?
That's right.
And they gave him a second Oscar that year for courage and spirit of what the veterans were feeling that year. And Harold Russell was a Canadian. Best Supporting Actress that year was Anne Baxter in The Razor's Edge. And Best Director was William Wyler for The Best Years of Our Lives. William Wyler, I'd have to go back and look this up for sure, for 100%, is the only director to have made the Best Picture of the Year 3 times. He made it with Mrs. Miniver, The Best Years of Our Lives, and Ben-Hur. Steven Spielberg has only made the Best Picture once. Clint Eastwood has made it twice. Milos Forman has made it twice. But William Wyler is the only director to have made the Best Picture of the Year 3 times. Go ahead.
1984.
Best Picture, Amadeus. Best Actor, F. Murray Abraham in Amadeus. Best Actress, Sally Field in Places in the Heart. Best Supporting Actor, Hang S. Noor in The Killing Fields. Best Supporting Actress, Peggy Ashcroft in A Passage to India, which was David Lean's last film. And Best Director, Milos Forman for Amadeus. Next.
1975.
Oh, some excellent trivia about that year. Best Picture, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Best Actor, Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Best Actress, Louise Fletcher in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Best Supporting Actor, George Burns in The Sunshine Boys. Best Supporting Actress, Lee Grant for Shampoo. And Best Director, we just did it a minute ago. It's funny how these came out of the bowl together, side by side. Milos Forman, who did Amadeus, also won Best Picture and directed the year's best film, won Best Director for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Hold on for a minute. Lee Grant was an actress who was blacklisted during the McCarthy era. If you don't know what that means, go to Wikipedia and type in blacklisted actors or the McCarthy hearings, and you will see that a large number of actors and actresses and directors and writers were unjustly targeted and unfairly targeted, many of them, for being communists without any proof whatsoever. And Lee Grant was one of them, and she made a comeback, and Warren Beatty gave her the part in Shampoo, and she won an Academy Award for that, and I thought that was great. That whole thing about the McCarthy hearings and blacklisting can be seen in George Clooney's 2005 masterpiece, Good Night and Good Luck, and I suggest you watch it. Now, the trivia I was talking about for 1975, there are only 3 years in history and 3 films in history to win the top 5 Academy Awards. Those top 5 Oscars are Picture, Director, Screenplay, Actor, and Actress. And I mentioned that Cuckoo's Nest had won all those. The other 2 years are 1934, It Happened One Night, Best Picture, Clark Gable, Best Actor, Claudette Colbert, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, and Best Director for Frank Capra. Do you know the 3rd year? We talked about this not too long ago. Do you know the 3rd year?
Golly.
It happened within the last 25 years. It's fairly recent, and it's a gigantic film that everybody knows.
It happened one night?
No, I said that already. This is something that was just recently, yeah. Okay, it's The Silence of the Lambs from 1991. That won Best Picture, Best Actor for Anthony Hopkins, Best Actress for Jodie Foster, Best Screenplay, and Best Director for Jonathan Demme. So only 3 films in history have done that. Next.
1992.
Best Picture, Unforgiven. Best Actor, Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. Best Actress, Emma Thompson in Howard's End. Best Supporting Actor, Gene Hackman in Unforgiven. Best Supporting Actress, Marissa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny. And a long-deserved Oscar for Best Director for Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven. Next.
1961.
Best Picture, West Side Story. Best Actor, Maximilian Schell in Judgment at Nuremberg. Best Actress, Sophia Loren in Two Women. Best Supporting Actor, George Chakiris in West Side Story. Best Supporting Actress, Rita Moreno in West Side Story. and Best Director shared double that year between Robert Wise and Jerome Robbins for West Side Story. Next.
1954.
Best Picture, On the Waterfront. Best Actor, Marlon Brando in On the Waterfront. Best Actress, Grace Kelly in The Country Girl. Best Supporting Actor, Edmund O'Brien in The Barefoot Contessa. Best Supporting Actress, Eva Marie Saint in On the Waterfront. And Best Director, Elia Kazan for On the Waterfront. On the Waterfront is considered one of the greatest acting films of all time. The famous scene in the cab between Marlon Brando and Rod Steiger is legendary, and that film is one of only a small handful in history to have 3 acting nominees in the same category, and they all lost. For supporting actor this time, Rod Steiger, Lee J. Cobb, and Carl Malden for On the Waterfront all lost to Edmund O'Brien in The Barefoot Contessa. Next.
1994.
Best Picture, Forrest Gump. Best Actor, Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump. Best Actress, Jessica Lange in Blue Sky. Best Supporting Actor, Martin Landau in Ed Wood. Best Supporting Actress, Diane Wiest in Bullets Over Broadway. Best Director, Robert Zemeckis for Forrest Gump. That's a pretty straightforward year. Next.
1948.
The year he got married. That's why he picked that year. He picked 1946, the year he met my mother, and 1948, the year he got married. That's great. 1948, Best Picture, Hamlet. Best Actor, Laurence Olivier in Hamlet. Best Actress, Jane Wyman in Johnny Belinda. Best Supporting Actor, Walter Houston in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Best Supporting Actress, Claire Trevor in Key Largo. And Best Director, John Huston for The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Oh, last one. You'll be relieved.
1959.
1959. Best Picture, Ben-Hur. Best Actor, Charlton Heston in Ben-Hur. Best Actress, Simone Signoret in Room at the Top. Best Supporting Actor, Hugh Griffith in Ben-Hur. Best Supporting Actress, Shelley Winters in The Diary of Anne Frank. And Best Director, William Wyler for Ben-Hur. Ben-Hur holds the distinction of being, again, one of only 3 films in history to win 11 Academy Awards. It did it in 1959, Titanic in 1997, and Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King won 11 Oscars in 2003. So very interesting there. And I'd like to also say one thing about the Oscars. The years didn't get picked here, but talking about threes, good things come in threes. Celebrities die in threes. There's only 2 films in history to win 3 Oscars for acting, and that's 1951's A Streetcar Named Desire, Vivien Leigh, Best Actress, Carl Malden and Kim Hunter in the supporting roles, and Network, 1976, Peter Finch and Faye Dunaway in the leading roles, and Beatrice Straight in the supporting role. So, we played this game in the doctor's office the other day, and we had an hour to kill. And I hope that wasn't too long-winded for you, but my point was that if you love something, you're not afraid to show it. If you love cars, if you love movies, if you love architecture, if you love anything in life, dedicate yourself to it. You may not get everything you want in life, but information, especially in this day and age, is at your disposal. And you can find anything out in the blink of an eye. Dad and I are often sitting here, and Dad will ask me a question. He'll say, look up the Battle of whatever during World War II or World War I. Or he'll ask me to look up the year that Canada brought in the $1 and $2 coins. Or he'll ask me what American president is on the $50 bill. And all this stuff is available at your disposal. And I've got many great friends on Facebook that have dedicated themselves to so many things. I see their posts. I love them. I love all of my Facebook friends. They post so many wonderful things. And I have found a great number of people to converse with when it comes to the arts. And, Dad was always interested in photography, and you've seen a lot of the pictures that I posted on Facebook, and I've really enjoyed doing that. And I hope to post more, and we hope to have a lot more entertainment for you in the years to come, right?
Righto.
What movie, in your opinion, it's okay if you can't think of one, I'm kind of asking you.
Yeah.
What movie, in your opinion, was the worst one to ever win Best Picture? The worst movie that won the Best Picture Oscar, didn't deserve it. There was so many others out there.
golly, Walt, you got me.
Okay, no problem. I actually have one from your time. It's 1941's How Green Was My Valley by John Ford. Worst Best Picture of all time, because that was the year of Citizen Kane. And we all know how Citizen Kane has been praised over the years as the greatest American film of all time. I don't think it is, but a lot of people do, and I certainly respect that, and I do put that film near the top of the filmmaking summit, the peak of filmmaking. Citizen Kane is definitely one of those films, and that's it. I can't tell you how pleased I am that my father agrees to do these videos with me. It's something that I love because I know one day my dad's not going to be here anymore, and I'll be able to look back on these with fond memories. But just as we did in the video that all of you remember from his 85th birthday in March, is we would not be doing justice to every member of this family if we didn't also talk about the experiences with my mother and Dad's wife this year of 65 years, my mother, Marie Cora Frith. You know, my mother was not much of a movie fan, I will admit that, but she always went along with us because we always tried to choose a movie that she liked. And one of the first experiences I can remember going to the show with her was a movie in 1976 called Swashbuckler with Robert Shaw, James Earl Jones, Beau Bridges, Peter Boyle, and Jean-Vier Bugeaud. And this movie was sort of the really cheesy, scaled-down version of Pirates of the Caribbean. It was about pirates fighting tyranny, and the pirates were the good guys in the film. And that was really something that I thoroughly enjoyed. And Mom used to come with us to a lot of the drive-in movies, remember? That was a lot of fun, you know. Drive-in movies, when I was little, I'd go to sleep in the back seat, and Mom and Dad would watch the movie, or if I was really into it, we would all watch the film together. And starting in 1983, that's when we used to go to Toronto for the first time. We used to go to Toronto for the first time to see movies that weren't playing here. And we went to see films like Educating Rita with Michael Caine and Julie Walters, and The Dresser with Tom Courtenay and Albert Finney. Remember going to see those?
Oh, yes.
And then 1984 was a great year. We saw 3 films in one day. We went down to see, yeah, that was great. Well, you only wanted to see 2. You and Mom only wanted to see 2. Yeah. I wanted to see 3 films that day. We started off with The River with Mel Gibson and Sissy Spacek. Mom and Dad wanted to walk around downtown Toronto, and I went to see Birdie with Nicolas Cage and Matthew Modine. And do you remember how hard it was for us to find our late theater?
Yeah.
We had to drive to the far north of Toronto, the old Eglinton Theater, to see A Passage to India by David Lean.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
So
well.
we got some great memories of seeing movies with my mother. And I just wanted all of you to see this picture here. 30 years ago, this year, this fall, I entered Mohawk College. I entered the college for radio broadcasting, and I got involved with the Mohawk College radio station the following spring, in the spring of 1984. And you can see this picture here of my mother and I. First of all, on the top there, you can see Mohawk College in the summer of 1984. And Mom is 55 years old in that picture, and I am 18. And yes, I had a full beard when I was 18 years old, and I had it for about 2 years until I graduated. So there's a picture of me doing DJ duties on my own that year, but I really wanted you to see this picture, which is one of the favorites that I have hanging in the house. My mother was so proud of me that year, and she liked the fact that I was getting involved in a program that I loved. The arts, the media, radio, and music, all combined into one. So on that note, we are going to end this video, and we can't thank you enough for watching. So say thank you to the folks out there, Dad.
Thanks a million, folks.
And just as we did with our last video, we are going to end this segment with a snack. And I have stopped wondering how they get the caramel inside the caramel bar, and I just enjoy them, as I'm sure he will as well. So there you go.
Well, thank you all.
Okay. All right, and hold it up, and clack, clack, okay? And enjoy. Delicious.